Hey everyone, welcome to DevRunner. My name is Paul. I'm an endurance runner and a certified running coach. And this is Coach's Corner, where I have conversations with running professionals and athletes to help you become a healthier, happier, faster, and stronger runner yourself. My guest today is Andy Raynor, also known as the FOD or Forest of Dean Runner. Andy has been on my channel before. He was spotlighted in episode number 10 of my subscriber spotlight series. And I have asked Andy back because he has recently set a new marathon personal best of 2 hours, 40 minutes, and 44 seconds at the Newport Marathon. So I thought to myself, who better to talk to about building speed? So I went straight to Andy. So Andy, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
That is absolutely fine. It's a pleasure to be back. As I mentioned to you before, apologies about the echo, it's a bit echoey, but yeah, it's great to be back, great to talk to you. Any chance to talk about running is a good time for me. So yeah, let's talk all about speed.
Very, very cool. So with that in mind, I was hoping you could sort of find a way to condense your rich running, training, racing history, just to give people an idea of how you've built your capabilities over time.
Absolutely. So this was my, I think this was, well, I've been telling everybody this is my 10th marathon. I actually worked it out for a video that I need to produce, and it's actually my 9th. So I've sold everyone short by one marathon, but I think over the 9 marathons in particular and other distances that I've trained for, I've just taken a variety of different training philosophies along the way, and I've tried out a multitude of different, training styles. And I think that's the key thing to say straight off the bat is, over time, you work out what works for how your body responds. And I think some of the common things that I've played with in terms of structure is maybe 2 workouts in a week and then a long run on the weekend with no intensity, 2 workouts in a week with a long run with intensity, 1 workout in a week with a long run with intensity. And then more recently, this marathon training block, which I feel has worked the best for me, was what I would class as 1.5 workouts with a long run workout, and that half being sort of like a medium long run. So in terms of marathons, that's definitely been the winner for me. And in terms of obviously building speed in the shorter distances, what I've found has worked really well over the years is sort of training for a marathon, really building that speed endurance, and then springboarding off the back of that and going into a shorter, sharper block, and then really focusing on that top end work and working, I guess we can talk about it a little bit more shortly, but working all of the curve, working all of your fitness curve, so that over a few months then you're going to be in a position where you've focused on every little bit of that curve. And for me, that's been the best bit of advice I've been given and the best training methodology that I've used.
That's great to hear. That's so great to hear. Now, to build on that, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about newer runners. There are a lot of newer runners watching my channel who are just trying to learn this stuff for the first time. And what I always tell the people who are kind of in their first couple of years of running is to start with a lot of just consistent, easy, anaerobic pace running, because that consistency is going to really help you build your speed just naturally, just through your body becoming more efficient with the way it uses its energy. So I hope you can talk a little bit about how you originally grew your base, how consistent mileage, not just within a training block, but block over block, really makes that difference.
Yeah, so I guess there's 2, I'll break this down into 2 sections. Number 1, how I started, and then number 2, how I built the base. Because the way I started was I came off the back of playing soccer, football, and so I was a winger, so I was always sprinting. So my mentality that had been drilled into me, moving then from that sport into running, was I need to run fast. To run fast, you've got to run fast. And I was trying to run fast a lot of the time. It took me about 6 to 9 months to realize that was not the way to do it. And it was in fact doing a lot of aerobic mileage, easy, zone 1, zone 2, consistent work. So then I guess when I give similar advice to other people, consistency is key. That's the first thing you always say. People get bored of hearing it. It is what is going to get you better. And then sort of building the base for me, I think really it all started to click after the second year for me, which is why I then try and pass this on to other people that are earlier in their journey, that actually I need to slow down on a lot of the runs and spend a lot of time running easy, which is difficult because a lot of people feel and don't quite understand their easy pace. I think a lot of newer runners go, I run hard or I run easy, and they have two distinguishments, and that's it. There's no kind of middle ground to any of that.
Mm-hmm.
You always then try and talk about conversational pace. If there's no one to talk to yourself. You might look a bit crazy if anyone walks past, but can you talk to yourself? Do you feel good? Brilliant. That's where you want to be spending a lot of your time. So in the early days, especially for me, a lot of that after sort of the second year was key. And then I'm not a big advocate I love high miles, but I've really taken a gentle approach to get there. So I've really kind of gone, right, in year 2, I was running sort of 30 to 35 miles, year 3, 35 to 40, year 4, 40 to 45. And I've just gently progressed it to where I am now, which is more, I guess I peak in my training blocks anywhere from between 65 to 75 miles. That's a sweet spot for a peak. And that will keep going up as time goes on, but I increase it sort of like once a year. So it's just about getting comfortable and getting your body used to working at a certain amount of time per week and just getting that like clockwork. And then when it's like clockwork, move on to the next.
Yeah, you mentioned the last time we spoke that I think the way you phrased it was you tried to get the most juice out of a certain amount of mileage as you could before you moved on to the next block. And I thought that was brilliant. That's just a great way to approach training because it allows you to build that mileage base safely. It allows your body to adapt without constantly pushing through too much speed or too much distance and breaking your body down. And once you're comfortable with a certain amount of distance, that's a great time to start introducing speed work because
yes,
you're already safely handling the stresses of just the sheer mileage. So great stuff, Andy. Before we get into talking about speed work proper, I want to take an opportunity because I'm a coach and I have to like hammer this point home, and I'd love to have you help me in that task. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the importance of core and strength work as the basis for good form, injury resistance, and eventually building that speed proper.
Absolutely. And I'm not ashamed to say that it's taken me too long to get to that point where this has become a really good part of my routine, but it is key. I think a lot of people's mentalities is if you want to run faster, then you've got to train more. And that's not necessarily the case. I was finding that injuries were popping up here and there. I have certain weak spots in my body. We all do, previous injuries in previous sports or just in life mean that some muscles are weaker than others. And so it's a balancing act. You've got to, literally balance your body 50-50 on either side as best as you can and put equal pressure through either side. And sometimes if there's weaknesses, that doesn't always happen. So then you might end up with overstrain injuries and overuse injuries. For me, right-hand side, glute, shoulder, ankle, everything on my right-hand side has been ruined from football. So I have a lot stronger left-hand side. So by doing core and a lot of strength work, it's meant that I've found, especially through this recent training block, niggles and injuries have been almost non-existent. Not quite, but so much better than they were. And yeah, I can't hammer home enough. If you as a runner have a repetitive injury that keeps cropping up or a troublesome area in your body, strength and conditioning, what it's going to do for you on a basic level is get every muscle activated, get everything firing correctly so that you're not going into runs with your glutes not firing, with your core not engaged, with your posture nice and upright. And if you go into your runs, aligned correctly and everything firing and activated, your chance of injury is just so much lower than if it's not.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's worth it's weight in gold right there.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
it's amazing because, you know, like you just finished your marathon, and it's amazing if you stand towards, if you watch runners towards the end of a marathon, you can always tell the people who do this strength and the core work because they're still running with proper form and everybody else
Yeah.
is just kind of hunched over and doing their best to just survive.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Andy. I want to talk a little bit about how your speed sessions, your proper speed work has changed over time. How did you start with the speed work, and compare that to what you did like just in this last block?
Okay, so when I started off, it was very much lamppost to lamppost. Run as fast as you can. The next lamppost, walk, light jog, lamppost to lamppost, and repeat. And then, because I didn't have a GPS watch when I started, it was all timed. So I just do timed intervals, which,
Yeah.
to be honest, I still do timed intervals now. And I feel like for me, time is for me personally the best way that I work. But I have tinkered with everything in between. And yeah, definitely it was much more basic then. But if we talk about working the curve, which I mentioned earlier, we've all got, without going into too much detail, we've got a couple of thresholds. We've got our aerobic threshold and our anaerobic threshold. And if a lot of people are relatively familiar with heart rate zones, then your aerobic threshold is basically zone 2 and below, and then your anaerobic threshold is, for me, I guess a pace I can hold for 45 minutes. A well-trained athlete, probably an hour. But if you tip that, you know, and you're in a marathon, you're on borrowed time. So my speed work has definitely changed to work all of the curve. And these speed sessions, I've got a coach for this block, and these speed sessions have really been about changing gears, working different areas. So I might start off with like 5, 6, 7 minutes tempo effort, so a pace I could hold for an hour, 3-minute jog, and then I might do some sets of 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and repeat those. So I'm just kind of going through the gears, and then at the end I might spin the legs out with some even shorter repetitions. And so all these speed sessions that I've been doing have either been geared around that, so I'm working different intensities, or they've been over and under goal pace. So if my goal pace is 6 minutes per mile for the marathon, then I've been doing repetitions maybe around half marathon pace, but then the offs, the recoveries become floats, so it's more of a steady effort, and they become more of a moderate pace. So as an example, I might do, if 6 is my marathon pace, I might work at 5:20, 5:30 for the reps, and then my offs might be 6:40 for 6:50. So I'm sandwiching that marathon pace in the middle. So it's all been about working different areas of the curve in some of those interval sessions, and then getting a bit more specific with the over and unders on the pace. And then, of course, on the long runs on the weekend has been dialing into goal pace. But in the weekly speed sessions, those are the two main ones.
Gotcha. So they're very interesting. You're actually going to get me off of sort of like my planned track for questions here, because I want to dive into this a little bit more. You know, for a lot of runners, speed is a combination of two things. Really, it's just kind of a mix of track workouts where you're kind of pushing into that anaerobic lactate threshold, really burning stuff, and tempo runs, which, like you said, are kind of like more along the lines of what you can hold for an hour.
Yeah.
If it came down to it. But what I'd really like to explore with you is the tempo pace workouts. Do you have specific tempo pace workouts, or like you were saying, do you more often than not always sort of move above and below the line of your expected race pace, all within the same workout?
Yeah, so when I've been coached this block, so I've had to put my trust in Will, my coach. Previously, I would do specific workouts at goal pace. So let's say I might do something like 4 times 6 minutes at goal, half marathon pace, 10K pace, you know, as an example, and it would be very specific and very much, I want to hit goal pace. with Will, I've hit the goal pace on the weekend long runs. So these midweek speedier sessions have been about working in and around it, because I think what that teaches you, and from what I gather, and I'm not an expert on this, but it's like if you can hold a steady over and under, then you're working at you're working at the sweet spot. If you push too hard in the unders, and you can't float well, your recovery certainly slowly start to drop off. You're pushing too hard. And so what I would find is when I would complete those sessions, which would be something like 10 times 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off, so an hour in total, and then progressed to 10 times 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off, so the effort became longer, the floats became less. In the beginning, that overall average pace for the session was very, very close to my goal marathon pace. It was like 6:02, 6:03 per mile. Okay. And again, when I went to the 4:2, it ended up being either bang on or slightly under, if I remember rightly. And then it progressed again further. And it just very gently got slightly under goal marathon pace as an average, but if you look at it across the board from like week 1 to the end, they were all very targeted around that goal marathon pace, and they always came out around it. So I believe the goal is to really kind of find that effort level where you can push hard but recover well and not let that drop. As soon as that gap widens, you've gone too hard.
Gotcha. That's brilliant. That's really, really brilliant. Because I come from, it's interesting. What I've found interesting about watching your entire training block leading up to the last marathon was the way you approach it exactly like that. The way you're always playing with speed on either side of a goal pace. Because I come from, I don't want to say I come from a school of thought. It's just because my running history is very much playing it by ear, figuring out what works as the years go by as well. But I've always approached it from the side of, okay, if today is going to be a tempo day, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to push tempo for, the full hour. I'm just going to try to maintain that pace and just feel like death by the time it's over. Or at the track, I'm going to go out, and if I'm going to run whatever interval at a given pace, at 5K pace, I'm just going to hammer it. I'm going to hammer it. And I'm going to hammer it. And what I love about your way of approaching this is that you're playing a balancing act. You're saying speed, but then give yourself a break, but then just slowly bring the balance to where you're doing a lot more work at speed, and it gives your body a chance to adapt. So yeah, in my mind, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's great stuff. Let's talk a little bit more about specific workouts, because there are some things that I've seen you do, and some things that I've seen you talk about, but I'm not sure if you've actually done them before. And because they seem to be almost the rage lately with distance runners, I'd love to get your perspective on some of them. Beyond just tempo work and just track repetitions, where we're talking about anywhere from 200-meter reps to all the way up to like 2-mile reps, or even doing a combination of them with a ladder workout. I'm very curious to talk a little bit about the Renato Canova special block, as well as the Norwegian double threshold system, because first of all, a lot of people confuse them. They don't realize the difference, and there's a massive difference. So before I just keep on talking, because I can get a little too good at that sometimes, I just want to hand it off to you to talk about those, the Norwegian double and the Canova special block, and how you use them, how you think they're useful.
I think they are incredible, but they take a lot of recovery. So what I learned last year is I think when I totaled it up, I want to say about 18 or 19 weeks of double threshold work. I actually started them around close to this time last year, and took them right the way through to London Marathon in October. So I remember coming off the back of my last marathon, and then I think I started them in May. And then with the Canova stuff, we'll dive into it more shortly, but that became a more specific thing 10 weeks out from London. So the special blocks really popped up then. The whole concept of double threshold work is, well, as we've seen at the moment, there's a lot of scientific evidence that working your threshold is one of the best ways to improve as a runner, because obviously what we're trying to do is increase our threshold tolerance, so just gently bump it up as much as we can. And working at that threshold from a controlled level is really, really important. So one of the things that the Inga Brixtons and all the other people do at the say, when we're running a threshold, you've got to understand this is a very controlled effort. We're not going all out here threshold, we are keeping things controlled. And again, the goal is with this, which I didn't have the luxury of, but is using lactate to measure our effort levels. So as an example, this won't mean anything to so many people, but the morning session of your double threshold should be around 1.5 to 2 millimoles of lactate in your blood, and then the afternoon evening should be around 3.5 to 4 or 3 to 3.5 in that region. Everybody's different. Everybody needs their lactate tested to give themselves the proper readings. I had to go by heart rate. So my threshold heart rate is around 172-ish, I've noticed. So my morning sessions, I always wanted to average mid to late 150s. My evening ones, I wanted to average early to mid 160s, so that there was a good difference in terms of the effort levels, but I was never quite pushing top threshold. And what that did for me in terms of running physical benefits, the strength around threshold pace was incredible. I felt like I could hold it forever. What us average casual runners don't realize is the recovery that comes off the back of it. So now, having done a training block with my coach without double threshold work, I've pulled through it and run my best marathon without actually touching double threshold work. And I remember the difference in recovery is massive. I was so tired after double threshold work for a couple of days. With this training block now, I feel like I could bounce back and continually, that no workout took me to my limit. And that's, I guess, what we want as runners, to be able to continually get up and run again. So double threshold work is incredible for getting you strong, but I feel like you almost have to have a professional lifestyle or the luxury of good recovery time to really get the most out of it. In terms of the special block with Canova, that's a different ball game all again. You're working at specific percentages of your max heart rate. So with the special block in the morning, you're looking to do, I think Canova gets his elite athletes sometimes at peak to run up to about 50K a day, and the morning might consist of sort of like 21K, and then the afternoon might be even bigger, or if not slightly, or they might equal out around 25 each. But either way, similar concept: morning a little bit lighter, evening a little bit heavier. And what he does there is he gets you to work in the morning. Half of your morning run is really done around 80 to 85% of your goal marathon pace. The second half is at 100%. So that translated to me was I did 10 miles morning, 10 miles in the evening. I did 20 miles of volume. It was 5 miles at 80 to 85%. I had a 5-minute rest and then 5 miles at 100% goal pace. That was my morning run. You don't think it's a lot. It really does tire you out. Evening, similar concept. Split it in half again, 5 miles at 85% steady effort, and then the second half of that, so the 5 miles, would be a workout, a speed workout, and you'd be looking to run sort of like 105 to 110% of your goal pace. So for me at the time, that was around like 5:30s per mile for whatever repetitions I was doing. And that might be, I did all of mine timed workouts, so it might have been something like, I can't remember now, so like minute on, minute off, 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, 3 minutes on, 1 minute off, K reps, just those type of workouts. 8 by a K, 5 by a mile, I remember doing those. So never really doing more than 5 miles of intensity, but you were frazzled by the evening. I mean, I've never felt fatigued like it. And again, strength through the roof. After that block, I felt as strong as an ox. But recovery for us average runners is intense. And unless you've got the time to dedicate to recovery, it's just a different world of training. It really is.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the one thing that I do want to point out is that when we're talking about the sort of Norwegian double threshold days, that is, for those of us, including me, who don't have like a lactate meter and the ability to test their blood, at the drop of a hat, you want to be working right at your lactate threshold, right. We're not talking the top end painful speed here. We're talking about being able to push your lactate threshold to a new high, just bits by bits. And with the Norwegian system, that's supposed to be something you can repeat on a weekly basis. Once you're in really great shape, there's even people who will do that type of workout twice a week because it's sustainable week after week. Once you get into that Canova stuff, you're talking about, even Canova does not push his athletes to do this more than once every few weeks because it just wrecks you. And you're talking about long sustained blocks of pain,
I think it's good to add quickly in there. You're exactly right. Those special blocks I mentioned only come in the last 10 weeks, and he doesn't recommend his athletes do them more than once every 2 weeks. So an athlete might only do 4 per training block of those special block days.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you're going to start to, you just won't come back of what, not due to that specific workout, but, I think every runner has been in a place where you're trying to stay on the bleeding edge. And if you just go that little bit too far, you just can't come back. And you're wondering why, well, that was 7 days ago. Why do I still feel horrible? And it's because you're pushing too hard. You gotta think about tomorrow when you're doing the workout today. You got to be ready to continue. You don't want to push yourself past that limit. So it kind of, in a way, the Canova stuff really kind of reminds me a lot of what you see ultra runners doing, like in order to prepare for like 100 milers, where you're going out on a Saturday and you're running 25 miles, but then Sunday morning you wake up and you're going out for another 20 miler. It's like, but you're doing that all in one day with a Canova, not that kind of mileage to that extreme, but yeah, you're just pushing yourself as hard as you can to try to grow that aerobic base as quickly as possible. Andy, I want to give you the chance to talk about any other workouts beyond what I've brought up that you find really, really useful.
Well, I think in this training block, I've had some favorites, and they really, I'm going to be honest with you, the over and under workouts have been great. Not only have I introduced those into the weeks with some of my more dedicated specific speed stuff, but in my long runs as well. So throughout this training block, my coach would have me run a certain amount of mileage steady. So I'll give you an example, 16 minutes steady, 6:0 an hour, and then 5 by 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off. Again, hard effort, recovery float, and then finish off with 30 minutes steady. And then that progressed up all the way up to 80 minutes steady, 8 by 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off, 30 minutes steady. And that ended up topping out around 2 hours 35 or somewhere around there. And that was the peak in the training block. Mixed in, and they were sort of every other week or every 3 weeks. In between that, I have more specific chunks at marathon pace and some similar Canova workouts. So I have one that was this is all off 1K float. So I'd have 8K, 1K float, 7K, 1K float, 5K, 1K float. And that 8, 7, and 5 are all at marathon pace. And then I'd have 3K, 1K float, 2K, 1K float, 1K, 1K float. And that 3, 2, and 1 are faster than marathon pace. And you think, I got that in the bag. But those last 3, 2, and 1, I was so tired. But the satisfaction when I completed that run was incredible. And that's a very typical Canova style workout. Again, you're working specific. There's none of this, go out and run these reps as hard as you can. It's right, you're running these reps at goal pace. And that's, I'm not saying that's a very specific Canova philosophy, because loads of coaches get you to run at goal pace, but it's a very typical Canova style workout. Anything like that, big chunks of work off a K float is very signature move of Canova. So I absolutely love those. And for me, my favorite, and that's actually going to be happening now, moving into my next training block, when I really focus on some raw speed, is taking to the trails, or for anyone out there, undulating routes up and down, not crazy, just permanently rolling, fartlek runs, just or just timed intervals, my first one back from a training block is always 10 by 1 minutes on, 1 minute off. And so it's just 20 minutes, 10 minutes worth of work in total. Light recovery jogs for the fartleks, no floats, just an easy shuffle, and really pushing on those undulating trails. I find that nothing gets you stronger than running on undulating terrain, whether it's trail or road, whatever. Pushing up those hills, forgetting pace, don't worry about pace, you're just working hard. I mean, the Africans do it, the best runners in the world. It's a staple in their weekly routine, and I totally understand why. Fellow YouTuber Ben is running has just been out in Kenya, and I've seen him since, and he absolutely raves about the fact that these undulating roads are a favourite of their training ground, regardless of what workout they do on them. So I think for any runner looking to get stronger, fitter, faster, if you've got a good loop, even if it's just a kilometre that you're prepared to do over and over again, and your intervals start at different points on that loop, so you can tackle a bit of down, a bit of up, a bit of flat.
Exactly.
It's great. There's nothing better than going up and then you're halfway through an interval and it flattens off and it goes down. The goal at that point, keep pushing. Don't get to the top and go, have a break. It's like, no, push over the curve, push down. It's that strength you get. So absolutely, those are some of my favorites, and I can't wait to get my teeth into those now.
That's really exciting. That's really exciting. Now, I want to actually take the opportunity to differentiate between what you just said and something that's very typical of sort of the first half of a training block for runners, where they're told to, before they get into real dedicated speed, heavy speed work, they're told to go out and do like hill reps, because it's a great way to build strength without stressing the muscles too much, because you're moving uphill and you can only move so fast no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
And but this, what you just described, is wonderful, because number one, it's recurring throughout a longer workout, and they're repeated over and over again. You're not getting a break in between. So, and I also love what you when you were talking about cresting the hill hard. That's what I tell a lot of my runners to do, is, especially on bigger hills, is take the first 2/3 of that hill, take your pace down, get it to where you're going to stay aerobic. But then when you get 2/3 of the way up, it's like, I always tell them, all bets are off. Go hard, because by the time you crest that hill, you'll catch your breath on the way back down. Don't worry about it. But the benefit you get from pushing hard up the top of that hill is just huge. So good stuff.
Yeah, I think I picked that up actually from, your cross-country scene over in the States is amazing, and I've watched so many cross-country workout videos, and I've heard so many coaches talk about the importance, because that's when breaks happen in races. Everyone's puffing hard up a hill, and it's like, who's the bravest at the top of the hill? Who's going to put the hammer down? And I know a few athletes that have from the UK that have gone over there to train, come back, and they said it's such a big sort of part of the training is to practice sort of going hard up and over the hill and down the other side. It's just something I've adopted. So I thank you guys for that one.
Yeah, I don't know if it came from us, but because it's funny, because I always perceive cross country as so much stronger in Europe and in Africa. And so, yeah, for you to say that about the States, it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's different courses, isn't it? So your courses over there are a lot more runnable. What I would class as kind of like, there's a lot of quick courses with you, lovely mown grass, very runnable. In the UK, it's a mud pit.
It's rough over there.
All bets are off at that point, so it is different. But yeah, no, I definitely love that concept of cresting the hill and really giving it some gusto, and then recovering on the down when you're resting.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Now, you brought up a point when you were talking about especially the East Africans doing a lot of work on rolling hills. But another huge advantage, I think, of especially the Kenyan running teams, is that they train in groups. And before we get out of here, I wanted you to talk a little bit about this, of the advantage to health and to speed and to motivation and inspiration from running in groups. And I know you don't run with huge groups of people, but I watch your videos often enough to see you running with Matt from the Welsh Runner. And it seems like you guys are always just having a great time and motivating each other to kind of push. And so I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about that, of running with at least one partner and what that does to your training.
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate because Matt's faster than me, so I've got it the right way round. He's very inspirational to run with because he's so quick. He's a 2:24 marathon runner. It's a time that is unfathomable for me. But in terms of sort of company, what you get from that in general is just someone else to bounce off, someone else to work off. You can alternate leads in reps, so you can sit behind and get the benefit of drafting, practice that in for race strategy. You can then simulate being chased in a race and have someone sit behind you. It just gives you that extra fire in your belly, extra motivation. Running on your own is great for discipline, but when you've got someone with you, I always find you get an extra 5-10% out of yourself. And not only that, but there's someone there to keep you company as well. Communication wise, you can chat to them, see how they're feeling, and if you're both feeling good, it's great to be able to push a little bit. I never advocate going completely to the well in a workout, but if you can really squeeze as much out as you can safely, then I love doing it. And you only do that when you've got someone with you. So like if anyone has the opportunity to run in groups or with someone, don't hesitate, especially someone faster than you. It's just such a great learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Andy. I know you're pressed for time, sir. I do not want to hold you any longer here than is necessary. I think we've covered all sort of the big brush strokes of building speed. I think you've done a great job of walking us through your own career and how you built speed at the beginning just by running more miles and staying consistent, all the way till now where you're pushing Canova workouts and you're just crushing yourself. But man, does it pay off. I was so excited to get the opportunity to have you on again, because better than anybody else on YouTube, I think you illustrate exactly how to progress and how it absolutely pays off. The proof in the pudding is right there with that 240. And, I got to say, Andy, in all truth, I'm so jealous, because I always used to see myself and my times as sort of, I was always just behind you. You would accomplish something, and then within a year or two, I'd kind of be able to catch it. And now I think you've reached the point where I'm never going to catch you again. So I'm jealous of that. But, with that said, sir, all the best to you. I cannot wait to see how all of your times continue to improve and how your health in general continues to get better. You're just such an inspiration. So thank you for being here. Before we get out of here, Andy, I want to give you an opportunity to tell everybody, again, what they can look forward to on your YouTube channel and where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate the kind words, Paul. Thank you. And as I said before we started this, it's a pleasure to catch up. It's great to see. And I think all I can hope is that just the running community comes together, like-minded people. We can all connect, support, watch, and follow each other's journey. It's fantastic. If anybody wants to follow me, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. All at FOD Runner, FOD Runner. That's, I think, my handle on all of them, to be honest with you. So in terms of what's coming up, more training series in the summer, short speed work, and then another marathon training block in the autumn or fall. So yeah, hopefully more exciting times to come ahead.
Very exciting. I can't wait to watch along with everybody else. So again, Andy, thank you for being here. It was a lot of fun to hear directly from the man who's done the work, how to go about doing it. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.